The Keeper of Secrets, the portrait section, the autumn of 1810, painted London in shades of amber and rust, and the crisp air carried the promise of change. In the modest photography studio of Edmund Hartwell on Regent Street, 12-year-old Eleanor Whitmore sat perfectly still, her small hands wrapped around an ornate wooden box that seemed far too precious for a child to possess. "Hold steady now, Miss Whitmore," Edmund called from behind his large-format camera, his voice muffled by the black cloth draped over his head. Just a moment longer. Eleanor's mother, Victoria Whitmore, adjusted her daughter's lace collar one final time before stepping back into the shadows of the studio. The gas lamps flickered, casting dancing shadows across the girl's pale face, but her grip on the mysterious box never wavered. The box itself was a marvel of craftsmanship, carved from what appeared to be ebony, inlaid with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the lamplight. Strange symbols adorned its surface, neither English nor any language Victoria could recognize. The box had appeared in their household 3 days prior, delivered by a peculiar elderly woman who claimed to be Eleanor's great-aunt Cordelia, a relative Victoria had never heard mentioned in family circles. "The child must keep it safe," the old woman had whispered. Her eyes clouded with cataracts, yet somehow piercing. "She is the chosen keeper. The box must not be opened until the time is right. When the world has forgotten how to believe in magic, that is when it will be needed most." Before Victoria could ask what she meant, the woman had vanished into the London fog as mysteriously as she had arrived, leaving only the box and a faint scent of lavender and something else, something ancient and otherworldly. Eleanor had been drawn to the box immediately, as if it called to her in a language only she could understand. She carried it everywhere, sleeping with it beside her pillow, taking it to her lessons, holding it during meals. When Victoria suggested they store it safely in the family vault, Eleanor had become inconsolable, claiming the box would die if separated from her. "There," Edmund announced, emerging from beneath his camera cloth. "I believe we have captured something quite special today." As he began the careful process of developing the glass pledge negative, Eleanor finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Hartwell, do you believe in magic?" The photographer paused in his work, glancing at the serious-faced child. "I believe in the magic of capturing a moment in time, young lady." "Why do you ask?" Eleanor's fingers traced the silver inlays on the box. "Because I think this box is full of it. Sometimes, late at night, I can hear it humming. And the patterns, they move when no one is watching." Victoria laughed nervously. "Children and their imaginations, Mr. Hartwell. Pay her no mind." But Edmund had been photographing people for over 2 decades, and he had learned to recognize truth in a subject's eyes. There was something about Eleanor Whitmore that unsettled him, an otherworldly quality that seemed to emanate from both the girl and the strange box she clutched so protectively. As the photograph developed in his darkroom later that evening, Edmund noticed something peculiar. While Eleanor's image was crystal clear, the box seemed to possess an unusual luminosity, as if it were generating its own light. The silver inlays in its own light. The silver inlays appeared to glow with an inner fire, and for just a moment, Edmund could have sworn he saw the symbols rearranging themselves on the surface. He blinked hard and looked again. The photograph appeared normal, save for an inexplicable sense that he had captured something far more significant than a simple portrait of a young girl with her treasured possession. Eleanor returned home that evening, with her mother, the box still firmly in her grasp. As they climbed the steps to their modest townhouse in Bloomsbury, she felt the box pulse gently against her palms, a rhythm like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. That night, as London settled into darkness and the gas lamps flickered out one by one, Eleanor lay in her bed with the box beside her. The humming grew stronger, and the silver patterns began to dance across its surface in earnest. She was not frightened. Instead, she felt a profound sense of purpose, as if she had been chosen for something far greater than her 12 years could comprehend. In the depths of the box, something enstoned, waiting, watching, preparing for a time when the world would need its magic once more. Discover, what secrets did this mysterious box hold? The truth will amaze you. The years that followed the portrait session brought tremendous change to Eleanor's world. The Great War erupted in 1913, transforming London from a city of gaslight and horse-drawn carriages into a place of blackouts and air raid sirens. Eleanor, now Dixie Sane, had grown into a thoughtful young woman whose unusual childhood companion had become both her greatest comfort and her most carefully guarded secret. The box had never left her side. Through her father's deployment to France, through the Spanish flu pandemic that claimed her beloved grandmother, through the rationing and the fear that permeated every aspect of daily life, the mysterious artifact remained her constant companion. It had grown heavier over the years, not physically but spiritually, as if the weight of its purpose was gradually revealing itself to her. Eleanor had learned to hide the box's more unusual properties from others. The humming had grown stronger, sometimes audible even during the day, and the silver patterns now moved freely across its surface when she was alone. More disturbing still were the dreams that had begun when she turned 15, vivid visions of ancient civilizations, of people who wielded power beyond imagination, of a great catastrophe that had forced them to hide their knowledge away from a world that was not yet ready to understand. In these dreams, she saw herself as part of an unbroken chain of guardians, each chosen to protect the box until the time came for its contents to be revealed. The responsibility felt overwhelming for someone who had barely entered adulthood, yet she understood with absolutity that she had no choice in the matter. Her mother, Victoria, had grown increasingly concerned about Eleanor's attachment to the box. The girl refused to discuss marriage prospects, showed little interest in the social activities expected of young women of her class, and spent hours each day simply sitting with the artifact, as if listening to something only she could hear. "Eleanor, darling," Victoria said one gray December morning, in 1918, as news of the armistice filled the newspapers. "Perhaps it's time we considered donating that old box to a museum. Surely someone could study those markings and tell us more about its origin." Eleanor's reaction was immediate and visceral. She clutched the box to her chest, her face pale with terror. "No, mother, you don't understand. It's not just an artifact. It's alive. It's waiting for something, and if we give it away, something terrible will happen." Victoria sank into her chair, studying her daughter's face with growing alarm. "Eleanor, you're frightening me. It's just a box. It cannot be alive." "But it is," Eleanor insisted, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Every night, it shows me things. Ancient cities, people who could heal with a touch, who could speak to the wind and the rain. They had to hide their knowledge because the world wasn't ready. They put it all in here, waiting for the right time." She opened her hands slightly, revealing the box's surface. As if responding to her words, the silver inlays began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic light. Victoria gasped, stumbling backward. How is that possible?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know, mother. I only know that I'm supposed to protect it. The dreams tell me that one day, when the world has forgotten how to believe in anything beyond what it can see and touch, that's when the box will be needed. That's when its secrets will save us all." Over the following months, Eleanor began to document everything she could remember from her dreams. She filled journal after journal with descriptions of the ancient knowledge contained within the box, the civilization that had created it, and the prophecies that surrounded its eventual opening. She wrote in a cipher of her own creation, knowing instinctively that the information was too dangerous to record in plain text. As the 1920s dawned and the world rushed headlong into an age of jazz, automobiles and electric lights, Eleanor felt the weight of her guardianship more acutely than ever. The box seemed to pulse with increasing urgency, as if it sensed that its time was approaching, though not yet, not quite yet. She never married despite numerous suitors. How could she explain to a potential husband that she was bound to an ancient artifact that demanded her complete devotion? Instead, she dedicated herself to her role as keeper, learning everything she could about history, archaeology, and the occult sciences, preparing herself for whatever revelation awaited. In 1925, when Eleanor was 31, her mother passed away peacefully in her sleep. As Victoria drew a final breath, she whispered, "Promise me you'll be careful, darling. That box, there's something about it that frightens me, even now." Eleanor promised, though she knew that fear was a luxury she could not afford. She was the guardian, the keeper of secrets that could reshape the world's understanding of itself. Whether she was frightened or not was irrelevant. She had a duty that transcended her personal comfort. Alone now in the family townhouse, Eleanor began to prepare for the next phase of her guardianship. The dreams had shown her that she would not be the final keeper, that honor would fall to someone else, someone who would live to see the box opened, and its contents revealed to a world that had finally forgotten how to believe in magic. Her task was to ensure the box survived until that moment arrived, no matter the cost. By 1940, Eleanor Whitmore had become something of a legend in her Bloomsbury neighborhood, the mysterious woman who never left her house without a peculiar wooden box, who spoke to no one except when absolutely necessary, and whose windows glowed with strange lights late into the night. The local children whispered that she was a witch, while their parents dismissed her as an eccentric spinster who had been driven mad by years of solitude. The truth, as Eleanor well knew, was far more complex and infinitely more important. At 46, she had devoted her entire adult life to understanding the artifact that had chosen her as its guardian. Her home had been transformed into a repository of knowledge, ancient texts acquired from dealers who asked no questions, archaeological journals, books on mythology and folklore from every culture she could research. The walls were covered with her own drawings and diagrams, attempts to decode the ever-shifting patterns on the box's surface. The Blitz had begun, and London trembled under the nightly bombardment of German aircraft. Eleanor's neighbors had fled to the underground stations for safety, but she remained in her house, protecting the box that had become the center of her existence. She understood, with a certainty that defied rational explanation, that the artifact was somehow shielding not just her, but the entire neighborhood from harm. Night after night, she watched from her window as incendiary bombs fell around her street, yet none ever touched her block. The box hummed more loudly during the raids, its silver petals blazing with protective energy that only she could see. When morning came and the all clear sounded, Eleanor would find her neighbors emerging from their shelters, amazed that their homes had been spared while buildings just streets away lay in ruins. Dr. James Morrison, the local physician, had grown increasingly concerned about Eleanor's isolation. He had been the Whitmore family doctor for decades and remembered Eleanor as a bright, sociable child. Her transformation into a reclusive guardian of an ancient artifact troubled him deeply. Miss Whitmore said during one of his periodic visits, "You cannot continue living like this. The stress of the war, the isolation, is not healthy for someone your age. Perhaps you should consider evacuation to the countryside." Eleanor looked up from the journal she was writing in, her pen poised over a page covered in the strange symbols she had learned to read in her dreams. "I cannot leave, Doctor. My work here is too important." "What work?" Dr. Morrison asked gently. "Eleanor, you haven't left this house in months. You barely eat, you don't sleep properly, and you spend all your time with that box. It's not natural." Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "Natural, Doctor? Nothing about my life has been natural since I was 12 years old, but that doesn't make it any less necessary. She gestured to the walls around them, covered with her research and documentation. Do you see all of this? Every symbol, every drawing, every word. It's all connected to something far greater than you can imagine. This box contains knowledge that could change everything we think we know about human history, about the nature of reality itself. Morrison studied intricate patterns covering the walls, the careful notations in Eleanor's precise handwriting, the obvious intelligence and dedication behind the work. Despite his medical training and rational worldview, he found himself unsettled by the depth of scholarship displayed before him. Even if that were true, he said carefully, surely you could share this burden with others. There are universities, museums, scholars, who could help you understand. No, Eleanor's voice was sharp with panic. You don't understand. The box chooses its guardian. It chose me, and I must protect it until it's time. The dreams have shown me what happens if it falls into the wrong hands, if it's opened before the world is ready. The knowledge inside, it could be used to heal or to destroy, depending on who wields it. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the London skyline scarred by bomb damage. The world is tearing itself apart, Doctor. We've created weapons that can level cities, ideologies that turn neighbor against neighbor. We've forgotten that there are forces in this universe far more powerful than anything we can build or destroy. When we've finally exhausted our capacity for hatred, when we've pushed ourselves to the very brink of extinction, that's when the box will reveal its secrets. Morrison left that day with more questions than answers, but he continued his visits. Over the months that followed, he began to notice something extraordinary. Despite the ongoing bombardment, despite the rationing and the hardships that plagued all of London, Eleanor seemed to exist in a bubble of protection. Her health remained robust, her mind sharp and focused, her dedication to her mysterious work unwavering. More disturbing still were the moments when he glimpsed the box itself. Though Eleanor usually kept it covered when he visited, there were times when the cloth would slip, revealing the artifact beneath. Morrison was a man of science, but he could not deny what his eyes told him. The silver patterns on the box's surface moved, shifting and rearranging themselves in ways that defied explanation. As 1943 dawned and the tide of war began to turn, Eleanor felt a change in the box's energy. The humming had grown more urgent, the patterns more complex. In her dreams, she saw glimpses of a future still decades away, a world connected by invisible networks, where information traveled at the speed of light, and humanity had gained the power to reshape the very building blocks of life. It was a world that would need the ancient wisdom contained within her charge, a world that would finally be ready to understand that magic and science were not opposites, but different expressions of the same fundamental truth. Eleanor was 59 years old, and she knew with absolute certainty that she would not live to see that future. Her role was to preserve and protect, to ensure that the box survived until its true guardian could claim it. Somewhere in the world, that person was already alive, perhaps still a child, perhaps not yet born, but they would come when the time was right. Until then, she would continue her vigil, the last keeper of secrets that could transform the world. Shocking, the box's true power was beyond anything anyone could imagine. The year 1973 brought with it a sense of endings and new beginnings that Eleanor Whitmore felt in her very bones. At 69, she had spent more than half a century as the guardian of the mysterious box, and the weight of that responsibility had carved deep lines into her face and silver into her once dark hair. Yet her eyes remained sharp, her purpose unwavering, and her connection to the ancient artifact stronger than ever. The world outside her Bloomsbury townhouse had transformed beyond recognition. The London of her childhood, with its gas lamps and horse-drawn carriages, had given way to a modern metropolis of electric lights, automobiles, and television aerials sprouting from every rooftop. The Beatles played on wireless sets, young people spoke of changing the world, and humanity had begun to reach for the stars themselves. Eleanor watched these changes with a mixture of wonder and apprehension. The dreams that came to her through the box had grown more vivid and urgent, showing her glimpses of a future where the ancient knowledge would finally be needed. But they also showed her something else, her own mortality, and the approaching end of her guardianship. It was on a crisp October morning that Eleanor felt the familiar pull that had guided her for so many years. The box hummed with an energy she had never experienced before, its silver patterns blazing so brightly that they seemed to burn through the cloth she kept draped over it. In her mind, she heard a voice, not words but a feeling, an understanding that the time had come to prepare for the transition. Eleanor rose from her chair with the careful movements of age and made her way to her writing desk. For weeks, she had been working on a final document, a letter that would accompany the box to its next guardian. She had written and rewritten it dozens of times, struggling to find words that could adequately convey the magnitude of what she was passing on. "To the one who comes after me," she wrote in her careful script, "you have been chosen as I was chosen, not by chance but by forces far older and wiser than either of us can comprehend. The burden you are about to accept will shape every day of your remaining life, but know that it is the most important work any human being can undertake." The box contains knowledge from a civilization that existed long before recorded history, a people who understood that consciousness and matter are not separate things, but different aspects of a single unified reality. They foresaw a time when humanity would develop the technology to reshape the world at the molecular level but would lack the wisdom to use that power responsibly. The knowledge within this box is the key to that wisdom. Ward it well. Trust no one completely, but do not let isolation consume you as it has consumed me. The box will show you what you need to know when you need to know it. Listen to the dreams, study the patterns, and prepare for the day when the world will finally be ready to remember what it has forgotten. The time is coming sooner than you might think, when humanity stands at the crossroads between transcendence and destruction, when we have gained the power of gods but retained the hearts of children. That is when the box must be opened. You will know the moment when it arrives. I have been honored to serve as guardian for 53 years. Now that honor passes to you. With hope and faith in the future, Eleanor Whitmore, October 20. The box's humming had grown so loud that she was certain her neighbors must be able to hear it. Yet when she looked out her window, she saw only the normal bustle of daily life continuing unchanged. She sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in a wooden chest, along with her journals, her research, and the photograph that Edmund Hartwell had taken of her all those years ago. The image had aged remarkably well, the silver patterns on the box still seeming to glow with their own inner light. That evening, as Eleanor sat in her favorite chair with the box in her lap, she felt a presence in the room, not threatening, but ancient and vast, beyond comprehension. The voice that had spoken to her through dreams for decades now seemed to whisper directly into her consciousness. "Well done, faithful guardian. Your service is complete." Eleanor smiled, feeling a peace she had not known since childhood. "What happens now? Now you rest. The box will find its way to the one who comes next. Trust in the pattern that has guided you all these years." As the clock struck midnight, Eleanor Whitmore closed her eyes for the final time, her hair still resting protectively on the artifact that had defined her life. She passed away peacefully, her face serene, her duty fulfilled. The next morning, her neighbor Mrs. Patterson discovered Eleanor's body and called the authorities. Dr. Morrison, now elderly himself, but still practicing, examined the scene with a mixture of sadness and wonder. Eleanor looked as if she had simply fallen asleep, and there was something almost luminous about her expression, as if she had seen something beautiful in her final moments. The strange wooden box that had been her constant companion was nowhere to be found. 3 days later, as Eleanor's modest estate was being catalogued by solicitors, a young archivist named Thomas Blackwood received an unexpected delivery at the British Museum. The package bore no return address, and had been left at the museum service entrance during the night. Inside was an ornated wooden box covered in intricate silver patterns, along with a chest containing documents, journals, and a single photograph of a young girl holding the very same artifact. Thomas, who specialized in ancient artifacts and had always felt drawn to objects that others dismissed as curiosities, found himself inexplicably compelled by the mysterious delivery. As he lifted the box from its wrapping, he felt a familiar sensation, as if he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. The box hummed softly in his hands, and for just an instant, Thomas could have sworn he saw the silver patterns shift and dance across its surface. He blinked, certain he had imagined it, but the feeling of destiny remained. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, a voice whispered, "Welcome, Guardian. Your watch begins now." Thomas Blackwood had always been different from his colleagues at the British Museum. While they focused on cataloging and displaying artifacts from humanity's past, he seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to understand the deeper significance of the objects that passed through his hands. His fellow archivists attributed this gift to his extensive education in ancient languages and comparative mythology, but Thomas knew the truth was far more mysterious. The wooden box had been in his possession for 60 years now, hidden away in his private study, carefully protected from the curious eyes of academics and the general public. Born in 1940, Thomas was now 83 years old, and like Eleanor Whitmore before him, he had devoted his entire adult life to understanding and protecting the ancient artifact that had chosen him as its guardian. The world of 2023 bore a little resemblance to the one Eleanor had known. Humanity had indeed gained the power of gods. Genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and nanotechnology had given people the ability to manipulate matter at the atomic level, to create thinking machines, and to alter the very code of life itself. Yet, with each technological breakthrough, Thomas felt the box's energy growing stronger, its silver patterns more complex, its humming more urgent. The dreams had intensified over the past decade, showing him visions of a near future where humanity would face a choice that would determine the fate of not just the species, but of consciousness itself throughout the universe. The ancient knowledge contained within the box, the wisdom of a civilization that had faced the same crossroads eons ago, would soon be needed to guide that choice. Thomas lived alone in a converted warehouse in East London, surrounded by the most advanced computer systems money could buy. Unlike Eleanor, who had worked in isolation with only pen and paper, he had embraced technology as a tool for understanding the box's mysteries. His quantum computers ran constant analysis of the shifting patterns on its surface, while his AI systems attempted to decode the symbolic language that appeared in his dream. The results had been extraordinary. The patterns he had discovered were not merely decorative, they were a form of living mathematics, equations that described the fundamental relationship between consciousness and reality. The symbols that danced across the box's surface were instructions, a manual for technologies that could heal the sick, restore damaged ecosystems, and even extend human consciousness beyond the boundaries of individual minds. But Thomas also understood why the ancient civilization had hidden this knowledge away. In their own hands, the same technologies could be used to control minds, to reshape reality according to the whims of tyrants, or to merge human consciousness with artificial intelligence in ways that would destroy the very essence of what made humanity unique. As he sat in his study on a cold December evening in 2023, Thomas felt the familiar sensation that had guided him for 6 decades. The box was calling to him, its energy more intense than he had ever experienced. He uncovered the artifact and gasped at what he saw. The silver patterns were moving so rapidly that they appeared to be alive, flowing like liquid mercury across the ebony surface. In his mind, he heard the voice that had spoken to Eleanor, to countless guardians before her, and now to him. The time approaches. Prepare for the final transition. Thomas understood. At 83, he was nearing the end of his guardianship, just as Eleanor had been. But unlike the previous transitions, This one would be different. The box had shown him in dreams that its next guardian would not be an individual, but an institution, a place where the ancient knowledge could be studied, understood, and eventually revealed to a world that was finally ready to receive it. Over the following weeks, Thomas began to make preparations. He compiled his 60 years of research into a comprehensive digital archive, encrypted with quantum-level security and stored across multiple redundant systems. He wrote the detailed instructions for the box's care and study, drawing on decades of experience with its unique properties. Most importantly, he began to search for the right institution to receive his life's work. The answer came to him in a dream. He saw a university, not one of the ancient institutions like Oxford or Cambridge, but a newer center of learning dedicated to the intersection of technology and human consciousness. The Cambridge Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies had been founded only 5 years earlier, but it had already gained a reputation for groundbreaking research into the nature of awareness, the relationship between mind and matter, and the potential for technology to enhance rather than replace human consciousness. Sarah Chen, the Institute's director, was a brilliant neuroscientist who had made her reputation studying the quantum effects in human neural networks. More importantly, Thomas's research had revealed that she possessed the rare combination of scientific rigor and openness to possibilities that the box's next guardian would require. In January, Thomas made contact with Chen, presenting himself as a private collector interested in donating his archive to the Institute. He was careful not to reveal the true nature of his collection, knowing that the box itself would choose the right moment for its revelation. The meeting took place on a grey London morning that reminded Thomas of the day Eleanor had first been photographed with the box over a century earlier. Chen arrived at his warehouse study, accompanied by 2 of her research assistants, expecting to examine a collection of ancient texts and artifacts related to consciousness studies. What they found, instead, was something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the nature of reality itself. Sarah Chen had seen many unusual artifacts during her career as a neuroscientist and consciousness researcher, but nothing had prepared her for what she encountered in Thomas Blackwood's warehouse study. The elderly archivist led her and her assistants through rooms filled with the most advanced quantum computing equipment she had ever seen outside of a government laboratory. All of it focused on analyzing a single object that sat at the center of his research. The wooden box appeared deceptively simple at first glance, an ornate ebony container covered with intricate silver patterns. But as Chen approached it, she felt something she had never experienced before. A subtle vibration in the air around the artifact, as if the very atoms were dancing to an unheard rhythm. "This," Thomas said softly, his aged hands trembling slightly as he gestured toward the box, "is what I have spent my entire life studying. And now, I believe, it is time for the world to understand what it truly represents." Chen's scientific training made her skeptical, but her instruments told a different story. The electromagnetic readings around the box were unlike anything in the literature. The quantum field fluctuations suggested the presence of technologies that shouldn't exist, patterns of energy that defied current understanding of physics. "Mr. Blackwood," she said carefully, "what exactly are you claiming this artifact can do?" Thomas smiled, recognizing the same mixture of curiosity and caution that had characterized every great scientist throughout history. "Dr. Chen, what if I told you that consciousness and matter are not separate phenomena, but different expressions of the same underlying reality? What if I told you that this box contains the key to understanding that relationship?" Over the following hours, Thomas shared the story that had been passed down through generations of guardians. The tale of Eleanor Whitmore, the mysterious woman who had devoted her life to protecting an ancient secret, and the chain of custody that had brought the artifact to this moment. It showed Dr. Chen, the photograph, from Lunettes in the Dies, the journals filled with Eleanor's research, and the digital archives containing his own 60 years of study. But it was when the box itself began to respond to Dr. Chen's presence that the true revelation occurred. As she leaned closer to examine the silver patterns, they began to move slowly at first, then with increasing complexity and speed. The symbols rearranged themselves into configurations that seemed to pulse with meaning, and Chen found herself understanding concepts that had no words in any human language. "It's responding to you," Thomas whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "In all my years as its guardian, I've seen it react so strongly to another person." Chen's assistants backed away in alarm, but she remained transfixed. The patterns on the box's surface were showing her something extraordinary, a visual representation of consciousness itself. The mathematical structures that underlay thought, emotion, and awareness. It was as if the artifact was teaching her, downloading information directly into her mind through some mechanism that bypassed normal sensory channels. "This is impossible," she breathed, yet she could not deny what she was experiencing. The implications, if this is real, it would revolutionize everything we think we know about the nature of mind and matter. Thomas nodded gravely. "That's exactly why it has been hidden for so long. Humanity has spent the last century developing technologies that can manipulate matter at the quantum level, but we've lacked the wisdom to understand the consciousness that observes and shapes that reality. This box contains that wisdom, the knowledge of a civilization that learned to harmonize mind and matter in ways we're only beginning to imagine." As if responding to his words, the box's humming grew louder, and the silver patterns began to form new configurations. Chen watched in amazement as equations appeared on its surface, not written in any conventional notation, but somehow directly comprehensible to her consciousness. They described technologies that could heal genetic disorders by restructuring DNA through focused intention, methods for enhancing human cognitive abilities without artificial implants, and techniques for establishing direct mind-to-mind communication across vast distances. "But why now?" Chen asked, struggling to process the magnitude of what she was witnessing. "Why is it revealing itself after more than a century of secrecy?" Thomas's expression grew solemn. "Because we've reached the cross that the ancient guardians warned about. We have the power to reshape reality at the molecular level, but we're using it blindly without understanding the consciousness that must guide such power. Climate change, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering. We're making decisions that will determine the future of our species, but we're making them from a place of ignorance about our own nature." The box pulsed brighter, and suddenly Dr. Chen understood. The artifact wasn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. It was a key, a tool for unlocking humanity's next evolutionary stage. The civilization that had created it had faced the same choice that humanity now confronted: use their technological power wisely and transcend the limitations of individual consciousness, or allow fear and ignorance to destroy everything they had built. They chose a transcendence, she whispered, the knowledge flowing into her mind like water into a vessel. They merged their individual consciousnesses into something greater, something that could guide the development of future civilization. The box is their gift to us, their way of ensuring that we don't repeat their mistakes. Thomas smiled, feeling the weight of guardianship finally lifting from his shoulders. "And now it's your responsibility, Dr. Chen. The box has chosen you as its final guardian, not to hide its secrets, but to reveal them to a world that is finally ready to understand." The truth about human consciousness was about to change everything. Over the following months, Dr. Chen and a team at the Cambridge Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies began the careful process of studying and documenting the box's revelations. They worked in secret at first, knowing that the knowledge contained within the artifact was too powerful to be released without proper preparation. The box proved to be an inexhaustible source of wisdom, revealing new layers of understanding as humanity's readiness to receive them increased. It showed them how consciousness and quantum mechanics were intimately connected, how the observer effect in physics was actually evidence of man's fundamental role in shaping reality. It demonstrated techniques for enhancing human cognitive abilities through meditation and focused intention, methods that could unlock potentials that had lain dormant in the human brain for millennia. Most importantly, it revealed the true purpose of human evolution, not merely to survive and reproduce, but to become conscious participants in the ongoing creation of reality itself. The ancient civilization that had created the box had understood that consciousness was not a byproduct of complex natural activity, but the fundamental force that gave rise to matter, energy, and the laws of physics themselves. As 2024 drew to a close, Chen knew that the time had come to share these discoveries with the world. Humanity stood at a crucial juncture, facing challenges that could only be solved through a fundamental shift in understanding about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to reality. The photograph Eleanor Whitmore, taken in that London studio 104 years earlier, now hung in a place of honor in Dr. Chen's laboratory. The young girl who had clutched the mysterious box so protectively had been the first link in a chain of guardians that had preserved humanity's greatest secret through more than a century of war, technological advancement, and social transformation. Now, as the box of silver patterns danced with increasing intensity and the humming grew to a crescendo that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space-time, Dr. Chen prepared to fulfill the ancient prophecy. The world had indeed forgotten how to believe in magic, but it was about to remember that magic and science were simply different names for the same fundamental truth. The age of conscious evolution was about to begin, and humanity would never be the same. In the depths of the box, the accumulated wisdom of an ancient civilization pulsed with anticipation, ready at last to guide its younger siblings toward the transcendence that awaited all conscious beings who learned to harmonize mind and matter in service of the greater good. The secret that had been hidden for over a century was finally ready to transform the world.